Hello friend, I want to tell you about the Nissan Primera car. Nissan, a brand known for producing excellent and reliable compact, mid-range and off-road cars, changed its strategy with the arrival of the 21st century. Not only did they move car production to Great Britain, but they also decided to take several bold steps. One of them was the alliance with Renault. Another was the presentation of a very original D-segment car. It is said that both were the reasons for the downfall of the Primera model, an unpopular, yet modern car, with as many supporters as critics. Engines. In the case of the Primera P12, it is difficult to speak of an extensive range of engines. There is no shortage of cars with diesel engines with a large capacity of 2.2 liters. Such an engine has only 122 or 139 horsepower, but the most torque of all engines. It is a Nissan design, although it is often treated as a Renault unit because it bears the DCI designation. However, the French diesel 1.9 DCI, 120 hydrogen phosphide, was definitely more popular. The unit was infamous, and due to its failure rate it was withdrawn during the facelift. What's broken? The common opinion about the failure rate of this car is mainly related to the 1.9 DCI engine, because it was the one that ruined Nissan's reputation the most. It is no wonder that it was decided to withdraw it from the offer. However, the Primera P12 is not without a few ailments that bother owners. A big problem is the quickly wearing front suspension, in which we have 4 wishbones. The upper one is subject to replacement in its entirety, because it is only a link with 2 pins, while the lower triangular one can be regenerated by replacing only the bushes. In general, the suspension is one of the more unreliable components of this model, especially since there is also the steering gear, which is prone to oil leaks. It is also not very durable and in many cars requires regeneration or replacement. Not only the chassis, but also the electrics have their whims. Lack of ground connections and minor electrical faults are the norm in Nissans. In diesel engines, it can be even worse. Unfortunately, sometimes the car's equipment also fails, including the exclusive reversing camera or central locking. Fortunately, this Nissan has no problems with corrosion. Now let's look at the engines. The basic engine, the 1.6-liter petrol, has no major faults, but it is a slightly weak source of power. Sometimes we hear about timing drive failures. The larger 1.8-liter engine has the right power for this model, is fairly economical, but uses a lot of engine oil. It is not uncommon to replace the piston rings, because they are responsible for such a situation. The cause is usually driving with too low an oil level, which is not easy, because the engine has less than 3 liters of it. Unfortunately, the same phenomenon, although on a smaller scale, occurs in the 2-liter petrol engine, which also likes oil, but it is not a rule. It seizes less often, because it has more oil. The engine, like other petrol engines, has a chain timing drive, which does not last forever, but does not cause any major problems. It is worth knowing that in all of these bikes the first symptoms of chain wear are jerking and uneven engine operation, as well as the check engine light coming on. Diesels are a bit of a separate topic. Fairly good 2.2-liter engines are actually quite durable designs that reward you with great durability, but repair costs can be high due to their rather complex construction. This engine is better than the 1.9 DCI because it is not burdened with the crankshaft bearing defect, and the injectors and turbocharger are more durable. The unit does not have its typical ailments, but everything that concerns modern diesels can happen. The relatively popular 1.9 DCI engine is unfortunately not a very successful design, which in Nissan generated slightly fewer problems than in, for example, Laguna 2. However, it is difficult to clearly indicate what can go wrong, because practically everything goes wrong. The problem with rotating connecting rod bearings occurs less often than in Renault. However, it is no stranger to turbocharger and EGR system failures, as well as injection and numerous sensor failures. However, a lot depends on the oil change, because the manufacturer assumed that it is enough to do it every 30,000 kilometers. Those who did not believe in these fairy tales have no problems with typical mechanical faults and have been driving without failures to this day. That is why, despite the bad opinions about this engine, there are still many of them on the market. However, it is worth knowing that this may be a bomb with delayed ignition. As for the gearboxes, Nissan has not completely eliminated the problems of its predecessors. It happens that the manual transmission refuses to cooperate. Sometimes it is a failure of the gearshift mechanism. Sometimes the gearbox itself, mainly bearings. The main cause of the problems? Of course, the lack of oil changes throughout the entire period of operation. Buying a CVT automatic transmission combined with a petrol engine is potentially a big risk. In practice, gearboxes are not repaired, although there are workshops that undertake this. A used gearbox may be a solution, but it is nothing more than stepping out of the rain into the gutter. After replacing the CVT transmission with a working one, it is worth selling the car. Operating costs are potentially high, especially for diesel cars. However, petrol Nissan Primeras can also be expensive to run, because many faults have nothing to do with the drive units. Even a well-maintained car is no guarantee of trouble-free operation. A large part of the costs is generated by the suspension, and a little by the electrics. Fortunately, there is no major problem with spare parts, although non-standard parts may be hard to come by. Unfortunately, the bad news is the poor market for used parts, because few cars were sold and they were not very popular, and Nissan petrol engines were still installed in Primeras, but not in cars of other brands. Renault diesel repairs are better, although in this case the costs are high. Is it worth it? Unfortunately not. For a cheap car of this class there are better alternatives, such as the much more durable Nissan Primera P11, but also the rusting Honda Accord, or the iconic Passat B5 in Europe. If we were to advise buying a car at a similar price, we would rather suggest a French car such as the Citroën C5 or Peugeot 406 or 407. The only situation that, in our opinion, can encourage you to buy a Nissan Primera P12 is to find an exceptionally well-maintained example with low mileage and preferably a 2.0 petrol engine, of course at a low price. Just remember that it's not easy to resell this car. Thanks for listening to me. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and rate my video. If you know of any problems with this car that I haven't mentioned, be sure to write about them in the comments.
I have good news for you. Now, if you are planning to buy a used car, or learn more about your car, you no longer need to search for the information you need on the internet. We have collected everything in one place for you, on the website carme.pro. Here you can find out everything about the car, what breaks and at what mileage, any problems with engines, chassis or gearboxes, which trim levels are better not to mess with and how not to lose money buying a used car. You will learn all this on carme.pro.